Next up, we're going to speak to Jonathan Waeckner, who's the Chief Marketing Officer of New Zealand's The Warehouse Group. We speak to him about e-commerce, how bricks and mortar stores survive and thrive in this digital world. Jonathan Waeckner, Chief Marketing Officer of The Warehouse Group, one of New Zealand's most successful companies. Welcome to Sydney, Australia.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
You've had an amazing career. You've been into so many countries. You've got 2 MBAs, not one. You've worked for Yahoo, for Zynga, for the Walt Disney Company, and you're even a banker. Why The Warehouse Group in New Zealand, of all places?
Well, when I met The Warehouse Group, one of the most clear things that I learned and realized was this was a brand that had a soul. And when I look at the brands that I've had the pleasure of working with, they're all brands that stand for something that's bigger than they are. I mean, you think about Yahoo, the entire team that was there really believed that the world was better with Yahoo in it. And for 4 years, we really felt like we were making a difference. And at the end, we made a really good change. And so I had the chance to meet the Warehouse Group. And you meet not only the employees, but the people in the community. You meet the people who work in the stores. I mean, even the people who pick you up at the airport and you meet in town. And it's a company that touches everybody. And it just feels massive. And so when I met the company, there was no way I could say no.
That's an amazing story, joining a company because of its soul. If we could have a look at Yahoo for a short time. Yahoo obviously has had many challenges over the last decade or so, having been the internet darling in the early days. What did you learn from your 4 years at Yahoo that you can implement at the Warehouse Group?
2 major things. The first was what it means to turn a company around from the inside. You know, you really have to build brands from the inside out, and Yahoo really started with its employees. And that was one of the real testaments that Marissa brought to the table, was changing the culture, employees first, because they're your best advocates. The second was just how hard it is to turn around a big company. I mean, Yahoo at the time was the 4th biggest website in the world. It had declining revenues and things hadn't been growing in quite some time. And to stop those losses and turn things around took an amazing amount of work. But when you focus a group of passionate employees around one goal like that, we actually achieved it. We turned it around. It was the first time in the internet history that a company of that size had turned around declining revenue. We were able to sell it to Verizon at the end of the day.
It's an amazing story. So let's fast forward to the Warehouse Group. Saying that it's an organization with soul, how can you discern that?
So when I met employees and I met people in the community who talked about the Warehouse Group, you could see them smile. And the things that the company stands for at its soul are things like helping the community through donations. Over 50 million New Zealand dollars have been given back since the company was created in 1982. The way they stand up in the community, there's this amazing program where they teach kids what it means to have a job well before they finished high school. You know, they do so much for the environment. We just got rid of all of our plastic bags. We're going carbon neutral next year. The ability for this company to actually lead the way, and then you take that forward into places like wellness and anti-family violence. It's a company where when it makes changes, other companies in the region follow suit. We actually just had a bill pass in Parliament that we made a change in 2015 where we would give people time off if they were a victim of family violence. And now it's a law in New Zealand, largely because the organization that I'm a part of led the way.
That must be incredibly satisfying to be working with an organization like that. Let's look at e-commerce, because obviously that's your experience from an internet point of view for the last 4 years when you're at Yahoo. Obviously, the Warehouse Group has a huge physical bricks and mortar footprint. How do you go about ensuring that the Warehouse Group's the short, medium and longer term future is well taken care of?
It's a great question. So there's really 3 things we're focusing on right now. The first is the amazing opportunity that e-commerce gives you to be laser focused on your customers, right? You can show up where they are when you need you any time of day. That's pretty cool. The second is actually making sure our supply chain is right. And when you think about all the logistics that it takes to get a package from, you know, a shipyard off to a distribution center into someone's home in a matter of hours, let alone days, it really does require some serious re-engineering, and that's part of the transformation we're undergoing right now. And the third is really just making sure we're using our footprint in the right way. We have 274 stores all across New Zealand. We have 12,000 employees. It's important that we use every asset to our advantage to make sure that when we do activate all things e-commerce, we're growing appropriately.
So you have people watching this interview who have their own bricks and mortar store or their business, and they're worried about what digital marketing and the digital revolution is going to, the impact it's going to have on their business. What would you recommend for smaller businesses who don't have 274 outlets? What do you suggest they should do?
I think in the new world, it is so important, more important than ever, to stand stand for one thing and stand for it hard. You know, you have to find a way to make people love you for the things that you stand for. And if people don't like you because you stand for something important, that's okay too. At the end of the day, it's important that you stand for something and people will notice. And as it becomes harder and harder to break through because there's so many websites, there's so many ways to advertise, the more you can stand for something unique and specific, the better off you'll be in the end.
So people will look at you and say, oh, he's a digital guy. That's easy for Jonathan. He gets it. What about for people who have maybe come up over the last 2 or 3 decades or however many years and don't have as much digital marketing experience? What do you suggest they should do?
I think the number one thing, and it's one of the reasons I'm here at Advertising Week, is find a partner in the space who can help make you better. And one of the best pieces of advice I was ever given was, as a CMO, make sure you find your 4 to 5 best partners and hold them close. And if you're in this space for the first time, or if you don't have the experience in digital, find a partner who's going to make you better, and find a partner who you can make better. And by the two of you working together, you'll be able to do some great stuff.
So, can you expand on that? What do you mean by a partner? Is it a web company or somebody else who's in a similar business to yours?
It depends on the size. I think if you're a big enough company where you can afford an agency, I would absolutely go and find a group of people who can help make you better. If you're small and starting out for the first time, there are some great self-help websites that can help do some of the things for you. There's a company called Shopify out of the US that I'm pretty impressed with. You know, you can start a web store on your own. They take care of all the complicated stuff behind the scenes, like search engine optimization, you know, things like customer relationship marketing, all of that stuff, and they just make it fun. And I think the most important thing, and your customers will notice it, is that you love what you're doing. Passion will transcend any amount of marketing, digital, traditional, doesn't matter. If you have people who are your fans, they'll find you.
So 274 outlets, how many employees? 12,000?
12,000.
12,000 employees. So how do you ensure that your employees, you mentioned employee marketing in a way, is so critical. How do you ensure those 12,000 people buy into the vision and the passion?
It's a big part of what we're doing this year. And the first step is making sure you have open communication, actually talking to your employees, bringing them in on some of the good things you're trying to do first before it goes on the outside. The second thing, and I learned this from what Air New Zealand has been doing so successfully in Australia and New Zealand for quite some time, is actually market to your employees. It's okay if you use things like television, digital, traditional, but actually talking to your employees and letting the rest of the country in on the action, let them eavesdrop, is a really, really big part of the journey. And the third is just making sure you actually give your employees a reason to love you.
Final question, Jonathan. Where do you see the Warehouse Group will be in 5 years' time? You've been with them for 5 years. You've put your mark on the customers, on the way the business is done, the marketing programs. Where do you see the Warehouse Group will be?
I think there'll be 2 major things that'll happen in the next 5 years for us. The first is I think you'll see our footprint evolve with the changing landscape of New Zealand. I think you'll see us move into smaller formats and more distributed formats, things like shop-in-shops, a lot of that stuff we're testing now. I think it'll just fundamentally change how we use our 274 locations. The second is obviously our online and e-commerce will be so customer-centric that everything will be able to happen the minute you think about it. You'll be able to get a package delivered within a day. You'll be able to have recommendations that are personalized to you. You'll be able to have pricing that's right for the moment you're in. And so I think e-commerce is going to be a massive growth story for us in the next 5 years.
Jonathan Waeckner, thank you so much for your time on Marketing Matters, and we're going to all look at your career with great fascination.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Coming up after the break, we're going to speak to Kaylee Smith from Facebook, who's going to tell us how small to medium businesses can best take advantage of Facebook's amazing reach.